got to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, because we were just talking trade deadline. Rich was here from London. He's getting ready to do the Ravens and the Titans. We're talking trade deadline, and your former quarterback in Kirk Cousins, who said yesterday he blocks everything out, doesn't have the social media, doesn't listen and all that. But obviously he knows it's a possibility. But he's also got the no trade clause. Kirk, could you you're Kyle. He's Kirk. Kyle, could you see a scenario in which he agreed to a trade and just go somewhere else to finish out the season and try to put his best foot forward before the inevitable free agency?
Well, I said this on my Fox Sports radio show that I have on Sunday nights, and it was week 2. Certainly the topic of conversation week 2 was the New York Jets quarterback position, what they were going to do. Were they going to go sign a veteran free agent who was still on the streets? Were they going to trade for someone? How were they going to, at the time, week 2, we had heard reports that Aaron was going to try to get back maybe for the playoffs. Certainly we've seen the way that's played out over the last couple of weeks, that he's trying to get back even sooner than that. But I threw out the crazy idea of, if you're the Jets, Kirk's in the last year of his contract. It's a contract that's been restructured, so the cap number's not that outrageous. If you're the Vikings, you're a team that new GM, new head coach, both of which come in last year. You win 11 one-score games, so all is good and dandy, and you make the playoffs. Well, you lose in the first round of the playoffs, so there's another early exit. And ultimately, what's the goal of the organization? What's the state of the organization? And I said this before they started 1-4. They were 0-1 at the time. And, it was, why wouldn't you take that call? Why wouldn't you, in an organization that may be looking to rebuild around a new GM and a new head coach, it gives you the opportunity to free up some cash to pay the best wide receiver in football, which is going to be expensive. But then it also gives you the draft capital potentially to move up and maybe get one of these aforementioned Caleb Williams type quarterbacks coming out of the draft this year. So I threw out that idea. Of course, everybody thought I was crazy at the time, especially Vikings fans, because, why would we give in?
We're not going to lose. We're fine. Yeah,
exactly. And it was more just, hey, look, I threw out the idea that if you're the Jets, you should make the call. And if you're the Vikings, you should answer the call type of a situation. And now you look at it, and I do think that personally, if I was Kirk and that situation presented itself, it would be one that would be worth considering lifting the no trade clause for.
Real quick, what about Atlanta? I know who's married. He and Julie got married down there, and this would require Arthur Smith to go, I don't want Desmond Ridder anymore, but what about Atlanta?
It would be interesting. You mentioned Julie, her family's down there in Atlanta, and there's a lot of familiarity with the area. I just don't know how the fit would be. They would completely have to change the way they do things on offense. Kirk's a guy who's top 3 or 4 right now, and passing yards and things like that. Statistically, he's having a great start to his year, minus the turnovers. Mm-hmm. And he'd essentially be going to a place where you're turning around and handing the ball off a lot. They have the pieces there. I mean, you look at the receiver position with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith at tight end. So they have the pieces to be a good passing offense. I just think it would be hard. Like, at this point, Kirk would be a guy that could show up on Monday and execute the Jets offense and be happy in that offense. Atlanta wouldn't be the same. There would have to be a lot of changes to allow him to throw the football and do the things that he wants to do.
It's kind of nuts that for a guy of his ability, first of all, the Vikings would have to make this decision that, Justin's out for a month, if not more. We're just going to burn the thing down and look to next year. That's a big leap for them, certainly. I mean, they could beat the Bears this week and then look at the whole thing differently. You never know. But the idea that a guy of Kirk's ability, we're looking at this right now, going, I don't know where there's a fit other than the Jets. And it seems like the Jets are willing to stick it out with Zach? I mean, the NFL is just so crazy with the trade deadline that sometimes the obvious answer you can't make it work.
You can't, and that's to me personally. When I mentioned this back at week 2, I ultimately said there's no way he's going to get traded. It's a thing of, there's too much pride in these organizations. Like you said, we're not going to lose any games. Like we're going to go play well and win games and make the playoffs. But if you think about the long-term trajectory of an organization, I had mentioned, last year, first-year GM, first-year head coach, you win 11 score games, and that covers a lot of things up. This year, they've got 4 losses, all of which are 1-score games.
Funny how that works.
It's like, it's this pendulum where ultimately it's going to settle somewhere in the middle. And they had all of them go their way last year, and this year they've had none of them. So it's like, I mentioned before, what's the long-term goal of that organization? They want to win a championship. I was there. I know the mentality of the Wilt family, and the only reason that they do it is to win a Super Bowl and to bring the first Super Bowl to Minnesota. So if you believe that Kirk is the guy, why is he playing out this last year of his contract?
Mm-hmm.
He should be extended, which would free up more cap room to bring in other players and certainly lock up your number 1 player and the best receiver in the National Football League, Justin Jefferson. So it's like the writing is on the wall that that's not the direction you're going in. And he's only going to get more expensive as he hits the open market in the offseason. So you've made that decision. What sets you up for the most success in the future? And it would be getting potentially the Jets' first-round pick next year, some other picks, and packaging them to go say, this is our guy. Whether, they might not have to trade up because right now they're 1-4. And like you said, Justin's out for at least a month. They're in a division where I think they'll win a few more games just simply because of the competition in the NFC North. But it's like, are you really – you don't want to go out and win 6 or 7 games
right.
and have the 10th overall
Then you're
pick.
stuck.
But so it's like – but you're stuck unless you have another first-round pick that you could package together and potentially move up and take one of those guys that you really like in the top 3. So it's interesting. It's so fun to sit here and talk about it and say, what if this, what if that? Ultimately, I think that's what it's going to be. I think it's going to be a lot of talk and speculation, and I don't see anything happening.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.